let's start again with Joanna de Angelis. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. Okay. So today we are in lesson 47 of the book Alert by Joanna de Angelis, Spirit Psychography, Divaldo Franco. And she's going to talk about vision of life. She's going to bring about topics that will lead us to pay attention to how we are looking at things here on earth in terms of our lives, in terms of everything that happens around us. So let's start reading. For those who only see the material side of life, the voraciousness to attain earthly goods and the inquietude when facing problems constitute priority reasons. Placing in death, the end of life, all considerations transit in a narrow circle of immediate interests without finding motivation for the most ample and audacious flights of thought. As a consequence, the interests go around a narrow space which dissolves and disturbs passions. Okay. So here, talking about, the vision of life, our point of view, so to say, she starts by saying and telling us that depending on how we position ourselves, and in this case, if we position ourselves too much on the material side of life, we are going to behave as very much like children when they see a table with sweets. They have to attack and eat as much as they can because it's going to come to an end. So this is us when looking from our material perspective, believing that life is finite, that is going to have an end, and I have to seize the day, like so often we hear people using this expression. And of course, when we are dealing with that, when we put everything, into the material context, we don't have any other interest, especially thinking about the spiritual things or the spiritual aspects of life. And so I have to do what I can for today with the things that I have, because I don't know if I have it tomorrow and how it's going to be. And this is why we limit ourselves very much, because there are few things really that we can wish for in terms of material life, health, comfortable life, right? Uh, just a few things. It's not that many, and we limit ourselves. So this is how she starts presenting this chapter to us. What is would be the characteristic of someone that only values, only pay attention to the material aspects of life? Any comments or questions?
Dr. Sada, that's why we have, I believe, so much negativism, negative and live a life of only thinking that it's today, not tomorrow. Live the life today, and forget about tomorrows.
Mhm.
And and but then again, I don't know. It's difficult if the person doesn't understand about we're here for a time and reincarnation. All this comes into play because you have
Mhm.
to understand that we're not here only for today and that's it. But if you open your mind to what we learn, reincarnation, we will be back. This is just part. We're here to learn, do the best we can. And if we have this perspective, it'll open our hearts and understand that, you know, we continue on. So don't live only on material life now. It's not only this, we're going to come back. So, I don't
Mhm.
know. What do you think? I mean, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. That's it. In relation to the question of Orlando, if she was thinking about her time, uh, actually, when we talk about um, the laws of nature, and even when we are looking at history, we may look at the world today and say, oh my God, it's so bad.
Yeah.
There's so much uh, that shouldn't be happening, right?
Yes.
So many people lost and acting through wrongdoings, hurting others.
Mhm.
But everything that we see today is still so much less than we had yesterday. So when Joanna de Angelis, that's the question of Orlando, lived, the world was so much worse than it is today. So if we, uh, but now what happens is from the spiritual perspective and being a spiritual with a lot of knowledge and understanding and compassion, she knows that although we are so much better today, it's not that we are wonderful and that we are working in the good. And even though she had it so much harder during her time, she still knows that we are still living in a world that uh, bad deeds are still prevailing over the good, and she's coming to give her contribution. So if we think that things like are bad now, 100 years before was so much worse. Every now and then I mention this movie. I think it was by Martin Scorsese's Gangs of New York.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, it's a very violent movie, but it was placed about 100 and something years ago here in the city of New York. Actually, many of the things happened in the area of Hell's Kitchens, where we have our spiritual center, right? And so,
Something.
I mean, you just need to watch that movie to say, I'm being unfair when I say the world has not evolved. We are
Yes.
talking New York City 120 years ago. Here, where we are, it was so much worse. Okay, things are not good. There is a long way for us to go. Yes, for sure. But it was so much worse. Uh,
Sarah,
yes.
speaking of Hell's Kitchen, that's where I grew up. And during that time, I was called by the Irish and Italian spick, and I was spitted on.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, that was that was quite something. That's what we say. Even now, we do not even need to go 100 years ago. I mean, even now, if we look at 50 years ago, and I mean, I'm amazed in my lifetime to see, for instance, this that today we have banned smoking cigarettes in restaurants, in parks. I think this is such an evolution, right, of customs, of habits, and I mean, little things that we see that have been happening, even in the way we are maybe not completely, but much more aware in terms of eliminating prejudice from us. Okay, it will take 1, 2 generation for this to come to pass, but it's happening. And 50 years ago, I don't know, 30 years ago, so many things that were not happening, right? So she continues saying, all are questions of ephemeral duration due to the situation in which they find themselves. In such cases, pain and problems present themselves as misfortune. The unattended caprices and the unfulfilled desires become reason for wretchedness and madness. The vision of life under the placement of corporeal reality is minuscule. So here she's referring to that situation of, our vision of life. So when we just, especially still living in a world of trials and atonement, change into a world of regeneration, where good one day is going to prevail, but it's still not today. What happened here is that when we focus our life only on the material aspects, we are going to be disappointed. There is no way, like we said, even when we are talking about the natural things of life, you get old, your vision start to deteriorate, your hearing start to deteriorate, you get smaller, right?
Yeah.
Your feet get bigger. All those things, that happen. That is natural. No one will say, oh my God, these horrible things that are happening to me. No, it doesn't happen only to you. It happens with everyone every day, the changing of cells. So all of that, when we think about only the material perspective per se, is very bad.
Yeah.
And this is why, she's trying to tell us, do not keep your eyes only, looking at the material aspects of life. You're much more than that, and there is much more than that. Because if you think about only this aspect, like for instance, now so many people losing loved ones, if you think that you have lost them forever, life can be unbearable.
Yeah.
It is hard enough, even when you know for sure that they have not died, that they continue existing, and that you're going to meet sooner than we think, right? Meet again sooner than we think. It's bad enough. Imagine thinking that's it, it's over, never more. Or, I lost a limb, nevermore it's going to be replaced. I mean, that's why she says it becomes unbearable. It can lead us to madness. It can lead us to be completely uh, lose control completely. But then she says, life here compared to the whole universe and eternity is minuscule. It's something for us to think about. Again, when Joanna de Angelis talked to us about this, she just wants us to put things into the right place. for us to look at them with the right perspective. She's not saying, oh, don't worry about that. Because, I mean, if that was the case, what's the point of us being here, right? It's not what she's saying. She's saying, okay, I know, I understand, but remember, there are things that are much more important than just this fact that is happening, even though it can be very painful to you. We are not dismissing the pain, the legitimacy of us feeling pain, but just thinking about that. It's like, when they say you lose a ring, but you still have your 5 fingers. Are you going to be crying over a ring that you lost, or feel blessed because you still have your 5 fingers and you can put rings in each and every one of them? So this is what she's trying to show us here. Any question?
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
This is what I meant. I always say this to you. This is how you, at this moment, using an open mind, going beyond as a spiritist to communicate to humans this other side of life, and only someone as a spiritist that has an open mind, that just because it's a spiritist is able to accept the many reincarnations of whatnot. But I'm trying to, in Facebook, to bring this awakening, like you're describing. This is what, as a spiritist, I hope you'll be able to write a book on it, that I could, with your open mind, that you could relate to those who are lost and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a characteristic of spiritism, being the open mind. With the statement that we already have that says spiritism doesn't forbid anything. What can be more open mind than that? You can do whatever you want. There is no prohibition whatsoever in terms of spiritist concepts. There is just an admonition saying, just remember one thing. There is a law that is called the law of cause and effect. Whatever you send to the world is going to come back to you. Now it's your choice. You do whatever you want to do. But just remember that, very much what we say to our children here. There are consequences to our actions. So choose wisely. And that's it. And no judgment, nothing. Let's continue here. When human beings consider life as a valuable opportunity for moral growth and attainment of eternal values, the philosophical settings in which they move about will be quite different. Suffering acquires its own meaning, in which valuable resources of peace and temperance can be extracted for beneficial living. The burden will dilute when faced with the proper attitude towards the difficulties, and by overcoming them, consequently, resolving each one of they as they present themselves. So here, then she's saying, um, we will, by looking at life with a broader perspective and everything that happens with a broader perspective, what happens is we will start placing, let's say, or giving the real value to things, and understanding that we are here to gather, this moral improvement, understanding about the um, spiritual life, about the reasons why we are here. And even when we have to face difficulties, all the suffering that we have to deal with, what happens is that it's going to be lighter. Remember that we say that sometimes we come to spiritual values, to spiritism, to a spiritist center, thinking that we are going to unburden all our problems there, give it to the spirit, say, I don't want this anymore, this load anymore, you take it. And we say, it's not like that. We cannot do that. It's our commitment. But what can happen, and quite often happen, is, you know what, you have to deal with your own burden, but I can help you. I can lighten up your trials and atonements. I'll help you carry them, but you will have to carry them. It's still us. It's still ours. I cannot transfer it. I cannot eliminate it, but I can, like they say here, dilute, because I have faith, because I will have true friends. I will have the understanding. I will have the knowledge that this is maybe bad now, but it's going to pass. So all of that, when we look up, remember last week we talked about, that women looking at the window, and if she looks down, she looks at the mud that is there. She looks up, she looks at the beautiful blue sky. Where are you going to place your glance? Where are you going to focus? Where you're going to be looking at? So this is the same thing. The landscape is still the same, but I may focus on what is good and beautiful versus what is bad and muddy, right? Questions, comments?
It's sort of like looking at the cup. Is it half full or is it half empty? So it's a matter of attitude. So,
Absolutely wonderful example, Marilyn. And the spirits lately have been asking us a lot to focus on the half full. We are not paying attention. We are always thinking, what else is there for me to do? What has I not accomplished yet? All of those things, and we are not thinking, or normally when I say here to you, like, we are not paying attention to how much improvement we have accomplished already. We're always thinking about what is missing, because this is the way society has been looking at us, judging us. It's not about that much about what you did, but about what you still have to do, and this is not right, because it seems that it's a never-ending race that we're never going to win, because as soon as I reach one goal, there's another one already waiting for me, and another one, and you never feel like you have accomplished anything. So normally we say, make these comparisons with children. A child comes and say, "Oh, look, Mom, I made my bed today," and then you look around, everything is a mess except the bed, right? That the child did the bed, and then as parents, what normally do we say? Okay, but look around. Why didn't you put away your toys? Instead of celebrating that, wow, how wonderful, you already did the bed, right? No, we already thinking, well, but you didn't do that thing. And we do that with us. And that's why I think it's what you just said, Marilyn, is so important. Because otherwise, it's just disappointment, frustration. We do not reach our own standards in this way. And it's going to be impossible because there is so much still we have to accomplish. And I'll look now and say, well, but it's still, there's this and that to do, right? Sonia, you are going to say something.
Yes, of course, because we're living in this planet with material. We need the material life, and every time when you face one problem, we have a tendency to believe our problems is the biggest one in the planet. Right then, that's why she's trying to explain to us. If you don't have the other side as the full of hope inside your glass, or to have a faith, or believe you have protection, and then you lose the tools to face this situation in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 days ago, then I feel sad, and I believe, oh my goodness, how can I solution this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And then I pray and start to read a book. And when I start to read a book, then was a story about HIV in Africa with young women, and they got pregnant and then passed for the babies, the HIV, then a solution difficult to solve. Then I realized I got the message. Yeah. Then my problem is so tiny, so small, so easy to make a solution, compare the others so huge, much more than mine. Then I think we need to learn how we face, as you mentioned, with direction we are looking.
Exactly. That's what we have to think of. Oh, sorry. That's how we have to think about, you know. Evil doesn't have the open hand, like, you know, Orlando plays it here. Only if we allow it to happen. That's why she's saying, it's your vision of life. What is my vision of life? That everything is bad, that everything is negative, that I have no responsibility in everything that is happening. In this way, we may have a very pessimistic view of life, and it's okay as long as we keep thinking that. Little by little, I'll get there. I mean, I have to adjust the lens with on how I see life, on how I see things, and the darkness will never get the upper hand. Absolutely not. So let's continue reading here. Then comes a natural detachment. So she's talking about when we are changing a little bit our vision, right? It comes a natural detachment from material goods because of the understanding of how transitory possession is and how it may change hands in a short period of time. Feelings of spontaneous solidarity embodied in the attitudes, propitiating happiness to serve and at the same time expanding the objectives of existence. So the more we shift, and like we were just saying, it is a process, okay? We have been taught as well to look at life with a negative perspective. You know, we have lots and lots of prejudice. You know, a politician is a corrupt person. A model is a vain person. A rich person is a selfish person. We have all these labels that we should be eliminating from our lives. Or, you know, a religious person is a delusional person. Okay, we have all of that we've been putting into place in our day-to-day lives without paying attention that we are doing that all the time. All the time we are labeling things, we are labeling people, and this gives a very negative connotation in regards to everything. So here she's saying, stop just thinking about the material life, that this is it, and start detaching, becoming more spontaneous in your way of acting, remembering about, you know, you as an immortal spirit is starting, you know, doing good and sending good, because many times people say, I don't do any good, I don't do any kind of charity, because what's the point? Or, you know, I don't trust this organization. Okay, there are so many others. Go and find an organization that you trust. For instance, there are so many things, and this, all of this, and of course, the times that we are living with, the pandemic, how it is affecting all of us emotionally speaking, is not helping. Right? We are in a very pessimistic era, so to say, but we have to break with that. We have to stop looking at the mud and start raising our eyes, thinking, okay, it's a bad thing, but let's think, what can we learn from all that? How can I better myself from this experience? Right, like you were saying, Sonia, right? You were so much focusing on your situation, which is quite normal. That's what we do. That many times we don't look around, and we don't stop to appreciate the rest that we have. Right? So, and this is so important. Any comment or question, or should read the next one? So let's go to the next one. Avoid becoming excessively impressed with the brief periods of poverty and fortune, health and illness, youth and age. Consider life under a global point of view, in and out of the body, thus acquiring inner harmony and a real vision of its finalities. Um, I know it's easier said than done, right? Easier said than done. Yeah, but it's reality what she's saying. I may not like that. I'm getting old. Money is not flowing that much. Okay. Um, but it's the cycles that we live, and like she says, it's when we think about the whole, we have gone through that so many times, you know, fortune, poverty, health, illnesses, youth, aging, you know, coming back and forth in the circle of reincarnation. Again, it's when we are here, our perspective is very limited, and it's not so easy for us to act as we should. But at least let us try. Let us try not to lose control completely. Of course, I'm going to be sad if my health is compromised. There is no way I'm not going to be sad or worried or look for treatment. But I have to understand that it's part of living. When we have to say goodbye to a loved one, it's very, very sad. We are going to miss the person. But it doesn't mean that I have to, that is the end of the world and that I have to get into a situation of total despair. I'm going to cry. I'm going to miss the person. There will be days it's going to be harder than others. But I'm not going to allow myself to get into a state of madness, like she said there, right? Of losing control completely. And this represents achieving inner harmony. Questions, comments?
I have a question. When she said in and out of the body, should like to say incarnation, reincarnation,
Yes.
or
Yes.
just to elevate our mind in the high level to look better options in the life.
I think it's my way of interpreting this is more in this particular case relating to a global point, meaning all the time we are coming and going in terms of incarnation and death, and coming here, returning to the spirit world, coming back, returning again. But then we understand what it is, why we are here, right? That there is a purpose. It's not just, okay, I think it's time for me to reincarnate again. No, we know that this is not the case. There is so much planning. It's like when we choose a career, let's say, there is going to be planning in a way, right? Say, okay, let's say I'm not a people's person. If I'm not a people's person, I cannot be a nurse. Right? I'm going to be I cannot be a salesperson. I'll be dealing with people all the time. So, but I'm good at the office, confined in a cubicle. It's good for me. So we will have to analyze all those things. And so when we are planning reincarnation, is not something that happened by chance. There is, like we say, there is a lot of programming. And once we understand that we come here with a purpose, and this purpose being of, experiencing things and learning and growing. And this means growing spiritually speaking in terms of knowledge, in terms of emotion. This is what is really important, right? And finally, she says, attribute to each fact, event, and question the value it truly deserves, keeping in mind the short duration of the body and the and the destination of the spirit. Consequently, you will discover how to behave and overcome limits calmly in the direction of the ideal destiny. So, it's very much like that phrase. When life offers you lemon, make a lemonade, right? I mean, now here you are with a basket full of lemons. They're bitter, right? They're not pleasant to eat by themselves, the skin, all of that. I have to peel it, etc. I mean, so this is what life is offering me. How can I use this and transform that in something that is pleasing, that is nice. And many times the burdens that we go through in life, the challenges that we go through in life, they have exactly the same purpose. What am I doing that is bringing this to my life? What can I do to prevent that? Or even like Orlando wrote here, when we go through burdens to challenge, because we suffer as well, we have much more compassion and mercy when we see the suffering of others. If my life is all good, I never had any problem health-wise, money-wise, family-wise, how can I understand when others are going through that? I don't know. I never had this experience. Sometimes I even joke with God when something bad comes to me in my way. I say, I know why you're doing that. You want me to learn, experiencing in my own skin this situation, because when someone comes to talk to me about it, I will sympathize. I will know what they're talking about. I'm going to be having much more compassion with this person. But please don't send everything my way. I don't need to experience everything, okay? Yeah, I have serious conversation with God. Say, okay, let me learn through the experiences of other. I don't need to learn that firsthand. But sometimes really I think that, and especially now with all of that we do, having at the center, talking to people, a lot of things, bitter cups that I had to drink in my life, today it makes me closer to people, or understanding more what they're going through, because it was something that I went through myself. You see, so I think there are so many ways for us to learn through the experiences. And then once we learn, we don't have to go through that anymore, right? And this is what she's saying. Even when we are going through things, because we have the understanding of immortality, of the reason why we are here, of the reason why we are experiencing things, we will be able to cope with that much easier, a much easier way. Again, it may not be completely easy, but it's going to be easier, right? And so that's why when you talk about vision of life, it makes all the difference. Again, what Marlene said is half full or half empty. I'm choosing for myself to look at the half full. And I think it's a good way to do things. Any comments or questions?
I've been reading books lately by Dr. Newton, and he talks about all the preparation that goes into advising us about our return. And of course, we have free will. We can either take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I really found it interesting. His books are great. They're expensive, but I buy them like at thrift books or eBay or even Amazon used, and it's not so bad. His books are really fascinating, and they just reiterate everything about Spiritism without his actually using the word. For instance, when I read No Solar, I thought, wow, that sounds like a great place. But is this a novel or is this real? Well, then I read a book by Dr. Weiss.
Yeah.
Some of his patients relate to the fact that when they passed over, they talk about this town and what the buildings look, and I thought, wow, that's not so long. So it became a reality for me.
Yes, absolutely. I like the books of the Dr. Wise as well. And yeah, it's again, it's science little by little getting into all the descriptions, like you said, that we what we have. I don't know if you read this book, The Experience that Dr. Eben, oh my God, I forgot his name, neurologist. I'll bring this name next week. Eben Alexander, that he's a neurologist, and he had a near-death experience. He had almost a brain death, something like this, and he stayed for unconscious for quite some time in the hospital, and him being a specialist in terms of brain, so he could say later, I mean, this is the person is brain dead, the person that was in my situation was brain dead, you could not experience anything. And then he describes everything that he went through. Eben Alexander, I think. Heaven something is the name of the book. I'm horrible with names and of people and books. And but he describes even meeting a sister that he was not really aware that he had, because I think she died young. And then, like you said, Merlin, and then the way he describes, you go back to the book No Solar and says, well, but it is the same thing. Maybe here there's so many details that people think that is fiction, fantasy, something like that. But of course, for the spirit through mediumship describing from there to here, it's easier than we going into an out of body experience or in this near death experience, that we have very partial, limited vision of things. But it's, yes, it's so important. We see, and we for us to read as well the result of research and by renowned scientists, doctors that we have here in the US and around the world that are already talking about the same thing, right? That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So let's stop sharing. Anyone would like to do the final prayer for us?